Okay, so this will probably be the last time I actually agree with her on anything. It shouldn't even take socialistic politics to approach this issue. That's what's kind of discouraging to see. But nonetheless, she is calling for a decrease in the maximum amount of interest rates that a credit card can incur. It says here that both Bernie Sanders and AOC accused banks of acting as modern-day loan sharks and called on Congress to enact a federal limit of 15% on credit card interest rates. The two self-identified Democratic Socialists are set to propose legislation capping rates on credit card and other consumer loans and letting post offices offer low-cost basic financial services, such as loans and checkings and savings accounts. All right, I'm not going to suggest that at all. But anyways, it looks like their formal announcement sharply criticized banks for charging an average more than 70% on credit card balances, while they are able to borrow money at less than 2.5%, which I understand why she's suggesting this federal thing, because we can't directly borrow money from the federal government. I think what happens is businesses borrow it, loan companies borrow it, and then we borrow from them, and the whole thing is a little bit dirty. But I'm not going to even question the whole process at this point. Some minor corrections could really take this stress off of everyday consumer, ourselves. And while they're at it, why not just decrease the APR or the interest rate on student loans while we're at it? I mean, suggest that even. I think that's even a better idea than suggesting that some people should just have their student loans paid off. Because you can't just hand out free stuff. Even if there was free money for the corporates to have, you can't do that. It's just not good. It's very volatile. It sends the wrong signal. And it should scare all of us. Free money will threaten our national sovereignty, as free money is the taxpayer's debt. With that said, I'm not exactly trying to hate, because I know she's pretty much just a pretty pink bow on something that might look like a Trojan horse. I'm pretty sure it's Bernie that's in charge here.
Running for Congress was never in the plan. It was never in the cards.
But she appears to have her political colors mixed up.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be hopping on here, Senator Sanders' account, and we're here in Kansas City to rally for Brent Welder. We're going to flip this seat red in November.
All right, so I'm going to break off and talk about, just for a second, the unsung heroes. Those individuals that tried to be a teacher or were substitute or para just for 1 year, and they had no loan forgiveness at all. Or those individuals that tried to be a police officer in some of the toughest areas of this country for 1 year or maybe 2 years, and they see no loan forgiveness. With that regards, I think the whole thing should change to the point where once you're on the ground, you can fill out a form. You can start getting reimbursement for, say, 15 to 20% of your loans, and that can increase over 10 years or over 3 years, depending on the area that you're serving at. That would make a lot more sense to me, and I'm going to have to say this just because I know some personal stories, people that I've known personally, and it's just not going to work for everybody. There's cultures everywhere, and sometimes you're going to do just as well as anybody else, but maybe you don't fit into that culture, or maybe your method's slightly different, and the culture that's embedded doesn't exactly agree with your method. So, okay, maybe loan forgiveness is okay in some instances, but it needs to be immediate, it needs to be monthly, and it needs to be for everybody that does the job. Now, this is the interesting thing about biblical references with regards to finance. In the Old Testament, I think it had it right, and I think it reiterated and restated that in the New Testament with regards to debt forgiveness. The debt forgiveness program in the Old Testament was after 7 years, you're to forgive the debts, and here's the scripture on it. And then in the New Testament, it talks about forgiving 7 times 77. I think that's the reference. But nonetheless, there is no repackaging in the Bible. There isn't any repackaging of the loans. There's a certain amount of time that if things aren't settled, then forgiveness is the only solution. And you see, anytime new repackages occur with regards to large debts, governmental debts, they seem to fail.
Perhaps these hieroglyphics will reveal a way out of here.
Oh, scared you didn't I?
You always scare me, Pinky. Now do me a favor and go play with those blocks over there.
Okay, enough of Pinky in the Brain socialism. Move on real quick and we'll take a look at this market. It looks like a tank. I've been trying to get the Mayday alert out there. I knew there was something going on. It was pretty clear that we're leading up to something. I would suggest in finances, this thing was looking a lot like 1987. And if that's correct, California, you're in the middle of the path of a couple big earthquakes. And if they're going to be about as the same as 87, probably even worse, and areas between Sacramento and Southern California, well, you're going to get hit. Timothy 2:11-13. Here's a trustworthy saying: if we died with him, we will also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we disown him, he will also disown us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot disown himself. 1 Corinthians 3:13. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, or straw, his workmanship will be evident, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will prove the quality of each man's work. If what he has built survives, he will receive a reward. Now, I'm bringing this up because California, your house is on fire. 2018 was one of the worst historic years for fires across all of California, and I can't tell you what it is. I can say that there's definitely warnings in this ancient book we call the Bible, and I've been wondering if some of it's just a warning to try to keep inside of a certain harmonics in order that we might not get too close to the earth, as it can be volatile, and also maybe not to set the earth off as a group, sending harmonics that could actually cause a negative effect. Nope, it's much more than that, but it does manifest as that. I can't exactly tell you where I'm coming from as a believer. I can tell you it started with something as small as a mustard seed, and I think a lot of ideas and faith can, but when they're tested, the question is will they stand, and what will they stand by? What will they stand meaning? Now, in my faith, and in the faith of the prophets, more importantly the prophets, because they've gone before me, a lot of them had to deal with depression. They had to deal with struggles. They had to deal with heartaches. They had to deal with sometimes they had to deal with doubts. But when they were done struggling with these things and they dusted themselves off, they didn't have to deal with suicidal ideations. They had to deal with the truth that they started to believe in, and their reward, well, it wasn't suicide. So, God bless. Keep praying. Make sure you believe when you leave that door.